Hello everyone, and welcome back to Rules as Written Character Builds. My name is Zach, and on this channel I make character builds for 2024 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, trying to strike a balance between theme and combat capability. This week's build comes to us as a request from one of the viewers. About 2 weeks ago, a user by the name of Stef commented on my Witcher video, asking me to make Prince Ashitaka from the Studio Ghibli masterpiece, Princess Mononoke. I hadn't seen the movie at that time, but let me tell you, I am glad it was recommended to me. What a truly fantastic film. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend that you drop whatever you're doing right now and watch it immediately. In regards to the build itself, Ashitaka starts out as a mundane warrior. He's skilled with the sword and his longbow above all else. In addition, he's a skilled rider, and during the events of the movie, he's cursed by a demon, and therefore gains some extraordinary abilities. So, in my mind, there's a few things that Ashitaka needs as a character build. Above average skill with a bow, his faithful steed, Yakul the Red Elk, the ability to manifest his curse mark, and enhance strength due to his curse mark. There's also a few scenes in the movie that I really liked where he's seen swatting away incoming arrows, so some form of deflection would be nice to have as well. Stef and I went back and forth a few times with the class for this one. You know, we were thinking Pact of the Fae Warlock for his connection to nature, Hexblade for the extra damage he deals with his weapons while he's cursed. In the end, though, I think I found an option that covers both his skills as a warrior as well as his curse mark very faithfully. The way of the Astral Self Monk. This monk subclass allows you to manifest a pair of astral arms over your own arms. With a little reflavoring, we can describe this as the curse mark unleashing itself and growing out of Ashitaka's arm. While these arms are manifested, we can use our wisdom score for our unarmed attacks and damage rolls, and also in place of strength for our strength checks and saving throws. This feature will let us build primarily into wisdom with less of a reliance on dexterity. But this isn't everything we need here. We also need our archery skills and our faithful steed. So I want to take some levels in Paladin as well. This is going to get us the Find Steed spell for easy access to a summonable mount, as well as the archery fighting style and proficiency with all martial weapons, aka longbows. Now, Monk/Paladin is generally considered an extremely difficult multiclass to pull off, thanks to the extreme multiclass requirements. Both classes require 13 and 2 stats in order to multiclass. Dexterity and Wisdom for Monk, Strength and Charisma for Paladin. We always do point buy on this channel. I don't roll for stats, so this spread leaves almost no room for anything else. So I'm going to use this build as a bit of a challenge to see if we can pull off that multiclass, Paladin and Monk. Fair warning, this will not be the most powerful build that you'll see around, but I don't think it's going to be all that weak either. So let's dive in. With these videos, I tend to only focus on features that either play into the character fantasy or are necessary for the mechanical play of the build. For this reason, you'll often see me skip over class features. That's just me trying to stay on course and keep these videos down to a reasonable length. So for species, we are going with human. Ashitaka is a sturdy young man, so pick up the tough feat here for an extra 2 hit points per level. This is also going to make up for our extremely low constitution score. Also, take proficiency in animal handling for that extra skill that we get from the human species. That's going to show off Ashitaka's skill as a rider. For our ability scores, strength of 13, dexterity of 13, constitution of 11, intelligence of 8, wisdom of 15, and charisma of 13. So as you can see here, we're going all in on wisdom. This matches Ashitaka very well. He's extremely level-headed and is always the moral compass of any group that he's a part of. That's another reason why I wanted to try and fit Paladin into this build. Ashitaka's vibe is just so Paladin. He's honest and straightforward, he doesn't have a cruel bone in his body, and he always pursues the course of action that is the most fair to the most amount of people. For our background, take Far Traveler. Again, this is a non-player's handbook background, so we get to distribute our ability score increases however we like, and we get to choose our own origin feat. I hate to keep doing this, but the player's handbook backgrounds are extremely limiting, and I always want very specific things for these builds. Now, for ability scores, increase your Wisdom, Constitution, and Dexterity by +1, for a total of 15, 12, and 14 respectively. For our origin feat, take Magic Initiate Wizard, choosing Wisdom for the spellcasting ability. We mainly want this for the True Strike cantrip. This spell has us make an attack with a weapon with which we are proficient. We use our spellcasting ability for the hit and damage, and can deal the weapon's normal damage or radiant damage instead. This attack deals extra radiant damage at levels 5, 11, and 17, 1d6 at each level. This spell isn't limited to melee weapons either, so using this spell we can make attacks with our longbow, using our wisdom score. For the other cantrip, just take any wizard one that you like. We don't specifically need one for this build. For the first level spell though, I would take False Life, just for a little bit of extra temp HP to make up for that low constitution score. So for this build, we're going to be focusing on using a longbow, a short sword, and unarmed strikes. We'll be wearing armor for our first 5 levels of Paladin, most likely medium armor because of our 14 dexterity. But once we get into Monk, we're going to be switching over to unarmored defense. So let's take a look at the roadmap for the build here. Levels 1 through 5 are going to be Paladin levels 1 through 5. 6 through 16 will be Monk levels 1 through 11. 17 through 19 will be Paladin levels 6, 7, and 8. And 20th level will be Monk level 12. So this build is set up to get us extra attack and Find Steed as quickly as possible, and then it spends the majority of our time in Monk to level up that curse mark. 2 things I want to say before we get into the levels and the features here. First off, roleplay wise, Ashitaka resists his curse mark and the strength that it grants him, so he only brings it out when he needs to use its strength to make a difference, like when he breaks up the fight between San and Lady Eboshi. And one of his goals in the movie is to cure himself of the curse mark. A lot of our features are going to come from Astral Self, aka the curse mark, so depending on how you want to roleplay the character when you play him at the table, you could either resist the curse like Ashitaka or embrace it. It'll affect how you feel about using those abilities. This video is just going to cover how to emulate the feel of Ashitaka. Roleplay your relation to your curse however you want to. Secondly, the human characters within the world of Princess Mononoke are far less magical than the average adventurer in Dungeons & Dragons. So while Ashitaka doesn't cast any spells in the movie, our character will have spell slots. That's just a difference in the setting. Anyway, let's get into our Paladin levels. For Paladin 1 through 5, we're going to pick up Weapon Mastery, a Fighting Style, the Paladin Smite feature, Oath of the Ancients, an Ability Score Improvement, Extra Attack, and Faithful Steed. For our Weapon Masteries, we are using the Short Sword and the Longbow. The Short Sword uses Vex. If you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to the creature, you have advantage on your next attack roll against that creature before the end of your next turn. The Longbow uses Slow. If you hit a creature with this weapon and deal damage to it, you can reduce its speed by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. If a creature is hit more than once by weapons that have this property, the speed reduction doesn't exceed 10 feet. At this point, we're going to be using True Strike. That way we can take advantage of our highest ability score, Wisdom. At level 2, we got our Fighting Style, and we'll take Archery to increase our to-hit roll by +2. We're only making 1 attack with the bow for this build, because of True Strike, but with the additional damage it deals, it'll be good to make sure it hits. We also get Paladin Smite at this level, letting us cast Divine Smite without expending a spell slot once per long rest. Smiting is a big part of a Paladin's power budget, and since they can now be used with unarmed strikes, it'll be pretty nice to have them once we get into our Monk levels. For the aesthetic of the build, I'd recommend using Wrathful Smite most of the time. It deals necrotic damage instead of radiant damage, and it also has a chance to cause fear on the target. That's pretty in line with the curse mark. Most people who see Ashitaka bring out his curse are pretty alarmed by it. So speaking of spells, I think we should also pick up Divine Favor, which adds an extra 1d4 radiant damage to our weapon attacks. This applies to both melee or range, so it will improve our longbow attacks as well. And in the 2024 Player's Handbook, this spell does not require concentration, so it's a really fun one to have. You can stack it with all those other good spells like Blast, Shield of Faith, things like that. Paladin level 3 gets us our subclass, and we're going to go with the Oath of the Ancients. This gives us an expanded spell list with some good options: Ensnaring Strike, Speak with Animals, Misty Step, Moonbeam, some good stuff in there. The Channel Divinity, Nature's Wrath, is also pretty good for the theme we're going for here. As a magic action, you can expend 1 use of your Channel Divinity to conjure spectral vines around nearby creatures. Each creature of your choice that you can see within 15 feet of yourself must succeed on a strength saving throw or have the restrained condition for 1 minute. A restrained creature repeats the save at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. We don't technically have the curse mark yet, but this looks a lot like how Ashitaka and even the cursed boars are able to explode the inky tendrils of their curse out and wrap up nearby creatures. So once we get cursed, this is going to be a pretty fitting ability to bring out. At level 4, we get an ability score improvement. Since we're so spread out with our ability scores, let's just increase our wisdom by +2 up to 18 to secure that +4 modifier. Our True Strike now has a +8 to hit with our longbow at level 4, thanks to +4 from wisdom, +2 proficiency, and +2 from the Archery Fighting Style. Paladin level 5 gets us extra attack. We won't be using it for now, since we prefer True Strike, but once we get Way of the Astral Self and we can make unarmed attacks with our Wisdom modifier, we'll be happy to have extra attack. Speaking of True Strike, it now deals an extra 1d6 radiant damage. At this level, we also get Faithful Steed. This causes us to always have the Find Steed spell prepared, and it lets us cast it once per long rest without expending a spell slot. So we now have our best boy, our faithful traveling companion, Yakul the Red Elk. Now, let's head to Monk for the majority of the rest of the build to increase our offense, defense, and get ourselves cursed. Monk level 1 through 11 will pick up Martial Arts, Unarmored Defense, Deflect Attacks, Way of the Astral Self, an ability score improvement, Extra Attack, Visage of the Astral Self, Evasion, another ability score improvement, Heightened Focus, Self-Restoration, and Body of the Astral Self. Now, we all know and love martial arts. It gives us a bonus action Unarmed Strike, lets us use Dexterity instead of Strength for our Monk weapons and Unarmed Strikes, and it lets us replace the weapon damage of our weapons and Unarmed Strike with our martial arts die. One thing to note here is that these benefits only apply while Ashitaka is not wearing armor and is only wielding monk weapons. Monk weapons are simple melee weapons and martial melee weapons that have the finesse property, not ranged weapons. So anytime that we're using our longbow, we lose all of these benefits from martial arts. Now, these martial arts benefits pretty much only apply to melee things. Unarmored defense isn't wrapped up in here, so it's not that bad. But just keep in mind, if you try to make unarmed strikes while holding a bow, they will be with strength, and they will deal 1 plus your strength modifier damage, and you cannot make bonus action unarmed strikes. So make sure to put that bow away before heading into melee. Oh, and by the way, we can now ditch the armor and enjoy our unarmored defense. Next, at Monk level 2, character level 7, we get Monk's Focus. Monk's Focus is the focus point system, patient defense, step of the wind, flurry of blows. So this is where I imagine Ashitaka was at the beginning of the film. Not yet cursed, but instead just a skilled warrior with his trusty steed at his side, capable with both his sword and his bow. Now, Monk level 3, character level 8, gets us Deflect Attacks. There are multiple scenes in the film where Ashitaka swats away incoming arrows with his short sword. This is that ability. He's so good at it, in fact, that sometimes the enemies even stop shooting at him because they see the futility of it, which is a cool moment when he's swimming across the lake and they're like, hey, just, let him go. We're not going to be able to hit him with anything. Additionally, at this level, we are going to get our subclass, Way of the Astral Self. And the first feature it gives us is Arms of the Astral Self. At 3rd level, your Mastery of Ki allows you to summon a portion of your Astral Self. As a bonus action, you can spend 1 ki point to summon the arms of your Astral Self. When you do so, each creature of your choice that you can see within 10 feet of you must succeed on a Dexterity saving throw or take force damage equal to 2 rolls of your martial arts die. For 10 minutes, these spectral arms hover near your shoulders or surround your arms, your choice. You determine the arm's appearance, and they vanish early if you are incapacitated or die. While the spectral arms are present, you gain the following benefits. You can use your Wisdom modifier in place of your Strength modifier when making strength checks and strength saving throws. You can use the spectral arms to make unarmed strikes. When you make an unarmed strike with the arms on your turn, your reach for it is 5 feet greater than normal. The unarmed strike you make with the arms can use your Wisdom modifier in place of your Strength or Dexterity modifier for the attack and damage rolls, and their damage type is Force. Like I said, this is the curse mark. It's improving our strength rolls by substituting our higher wisdom, and it lets us make our unarmed strikes with wisdom, so we can fully take advantage of our extra attack, martial arts, and flurry of blows. We're not held back by that 14 dexterity, now we're using our 18 wisdom. It's a real shame that 2024 changed grapple checks from athletic checks to a saving throw with the DC based on your strength modifier. But I'm sure an understanding DM would let you use your wisdom modifier for that DC to accommodate the transition to the new rules. From this point on, in most combats, we'll be manifesting the curse mark and making unarmed attacks to make sure that we can use our wisdom for the hit and damage. Or we'll be riding Yakul around, firing off true strike arrow shots, trying to do kiting, keeping enemies at bay, that sort of thing. Now, our next level, level 9, Monk level 4, is going to get us another ability score improvement, and I want to pick up Great Weapon Master. Increase your strength score by 1 to a maximum of 20. When you hit a creature with a weapon that has the heavy property, as part of the attack action, the weapon deals extra damage equal to your proficiency modifier. Immediately after you score a critical hit, or reduce a creature to 0 hit points with a melee weapon, you can make 1 attack with the same weapon as a bonus action. So on the surface, this appears to be a feat that only works with big melee weapons, which we certainly don't use. However, the second line, Heavy Weapon Mastery, applies to any weapon with the heavy property, which the longbow has. So now we can add our proficiency bonus to the damage we deal with our longbow. Ashitaka is notorious for decapitating enemies with his arrows, or even shooting off the arms of his opponents. So we'll take this extra damage as a way to replicate that capability. At this point, it seems more effective to not use True Strike for our ranged attacks, and instead use dexterity so we can make 2 attacks and therefore benefit from that proficiency bonus damage twice. Archery does help make up for that low dexterity, so at this level our to-hit rolls will be +8. So do it this way for more damage. However, if you're up against a target with a particularly high armor class and you need that extra +2 from wisdom, definitely do True Strike instead. So save True Strike for when you really need to land that shot, but when you're just up against a bunch of mooks, fire off multiple arrows with extra attack. Monk level 5 gets us extra attack, which we already have, and then Monk level 6, character level 11, gets us another subclass feature, Visage of the Astral Self. When you reach 6th level, you can summon the Visage of your Astral Self. As a bonus action, or as part of the bonus action you take to activate Arms of the Astral Self, you can spend 1 key point to summon this Visage for 10 minutes. It vanishes early if you are incapacitated or die. The spectral visage covers your face like a helmet or mask. You determine its appearance. While the spectral visage is present, you gain the following benefits. Astral Sight. You can see normally in darkness, both magical and non-magical, to a distance of 120 feet. Wisdom of the Spirit. You have advantage on Wisdom, Insight, and Charisma Intimidation checks. Word of the Spirit. When you speak, you can direct your words to a creature of your choice that you can see within 60 feet of you, making it so only that creature can hear you. Alternatively, you can amplify your voice so that all creatures within 600 feet can hear you. Our curse is spreading at this point, covering not only our arms, but flowing from our head as well. This would alarm Ashitaka for sure, but if your version of the character is embracing their curse, this is the next step in its evolution. So at this level, level 11, our True Strike is also increasing in damage to now deal an additional 2d6 radiant damage on top of the weapon's normal damage. Monk level 7, character level 12, gets us Evasion. When you're subject to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, you instead take no damage if you succeed on the saving throw, and only half damage if you fail. You don't benefit from this feature if you have the incapacitated condition. The people of Irontown are always throwing around explosives, so this is going to come in handy. Also, we have a fairly low dexterity saving throw for a monk since our dexterity is only 14 and we started out in Paladin, therefore missing out on dexterity saving throw proficiency. So most of the time, we aren't going to be passing saves, but thanks to this feature, we'll still only take half damage. Monk level 8 gets us a ability score improvement. Let's max out our wisdom and set us up for those 2 epic boons later. Put a +2 into your wisdom for a total of 20. Monk level 10 brings us 2 features, Heightened Focus and Self-Restoration. This is also character level 15 at this point. Heightened Focus improves our Monk's focus abilities, giving us an extra attack on our flurry of blows, letting Patient Defense grant us some temporary hit points, and allowing us to carry another creature with us during Step of the Wind. Ashitaka is always carrying people on his back in this movie. Whether it's the soldier he found in the river, or when he's carrying San out of Irontown, I feel like this dude is just lugging people around. So this is actually a fitting ability for what we see in the movie. Additionally, at this level, Self-Restoration is going to let us end a charmed, frightened, or poisoned condition on ourselves at the end of every single turn. No action economy required. This is pretty sick, but too bad that it can't also remove curses. Finally, Monk level 11 gets us our last subclass feature for the build, Body of the Astral Self. Starting at 11th level, when you have both your astral arms and visage summoned, you can cause the body of your astral self to appear. No action required. This spectral body covers your physical form like a suit of armor, connecting with the arms and the visage. You determine its appearance. While the spectral body is present, you gain the following benefits. When you take acid, cold, fire, force, lightning, or thunder damage, you can use your reaction to deflect it. When you do so, the damage you take is reduced by 1d10 plus your wisdom modifier. Minimum reduction of 1. Once on each of your turns, when you hit a target with the arms of the astral self, you can deal extra damage to the target equal to your martial arts die. We aren't going far enough into Monk to get the actual deflect energy feature, so this version is a pretty good stand-in. Also, extra damage on our unarmed attacks is nice. This is the highest evolution of our curse mark, covering our entire body, protecting us, and also increasing our damage output. We now look just like that boar god that attacked the village at the beginning of the movie, completely covered in the cursed inky tendrils. They protect our body, they increase our damage. This is as much as we're going to get for this build. Now, we're going to go back to Paladin for 3 levels to get some auras, but most importantly to pick up another ability score improvement to get our first epic boon. Paladin levels 6 through 8 will give us Aura of Protection, Aura of Warding, and an ability score improvement. Aura of Protection grants us and our allies within the 10 feet of us a bonus to all saving throws equal to our charisma modifier, which unfortunately is only a +1. Not great, but we'll take it. And then Aura of Warding at Paladin level 7, character level 18. Ancient magic lies so heavily upon you that it forms an eldritch ward, blunting energy from beyond the material plane. You and your allies have resistance to necrotic, psychic, and radiant damage while within your aura of protection. This one's nice because it doesn't rely on our charisma modifier at all. It's not quite as good as it was in the 2014 Player's Handbook, but it's still pretty good. Paladin level 8 gets us an ability score improvement, and since we are level 19, we can now take an epic boon. Let's take the Boon of Fortitude, a favorite of mine. Increase one ability score of your choice by 1 to a maximum of 30. Your hit point maximum increases by 40. In addition, whenever you regain hit points, you regain additional hit points equal to your Constitution modifier. Once you've regained these additional hit points, you can't do so again until the start of your next turn. More hit points is always nice, especially with our low Constitution score. Additionally, we have some ways to heal ourselves, like the Lay on Hands feature, healing spells, or Uncanny Metabolism from Monk, so it's not bad to improve them, even if it's only a +1 because our Constitution modifier is so low. Using this boon, increase your Wisdom by +1 to 21. Next, Monk level 12, character level 20 gets us another ability score improvement for a second epic boon. Since our curse has evolved to such a point to now cover our entire body, improve our attack damage, protect ourselves, let's take it one step further with the Boon of the Night Spirit. Increase one ability score of your choice by 1 to a maximum of 30. While within dim light or darkness, you can give yourselves the invisible condition as a bonus action. This condition ends on you immediately after you take an action, a bonus action, or a reaction. While within dim light or darkness, you have resistance to all damage except psychic and radiant. Let's bump our wisdom with this one up to 22 to secure that +6 modifier. And that's the build. A mismatched one this time. Paladin and Monk are about as different of a class as you can get, but I think the through line of flavor here is a pretty good match for the characteristics of Ashitaka, a noble and honest warrior on a quest to make the world a better place. Admittedly, we really only took the Paladin levels to get Find Steed, because I cannot imagine Ashitaka on his quest without Yakul by his side. I gotta say though, if alternatively you would rather buy a mount in-game, you can just play this build as a pure monk. There's a lot of good in those last 8 monk levels. Proficiency in all saving throws, the final Astral Self subclass ability, which gives you extra attack 2, the monk capstone that increases wisdom and dexterity by +4 each. With that version, you do miss out on the archery fighting style, on martial weapon proficiency, so you can use the longbow, and therefore, since you won't be using the longbow, you'll miss out on the great weapon master feat, but you wouldn't need the 13 strength and charisma, so that would be nice. In that case, it would be a lot more important to keep your mount alive, since you can't just resummon it with a spell slot, so consider taking the mounted combatant feat. That's definitely the more straightforward version of the build, so play it that way if you don't mind not having the mount on speed dial. For me, I really wanted to be able to just summon Yakul over and over anytime we need him. As far as combat goes, at its heart, I see Ashitaka as a horse archer, so that's why I went into Paladin, to get longbows, the archery fighting style, and Find Steed. For the mechanics of this build, I think the funnest part is going to be kiting with Yakul, launching out those high damage true strike longbow attacks. And you can even do a little bit of kiting with your unarmed strikes, since Arms of the Astral Self increases your unarmed strike range by 5 feet, so you can attack most enemies without entering their reach, and then ride off without having to disengage. When you do leave Yakul behind and get mixed up in melee, you'll be able to make some high damage, wisdom-based unarmed strikes, and even drop some Paladin smites in there if you want to. Admittedly, a Paladin smite uses a bonus action, so you might be better off Flurry of Blowing or just making a bonus action unarmed strike, but if you land a crit and you want to drop in a 2nd level Divine Smite, you absolutely can. You'll even have some pretty nice buff spells from Paladin, like Shield of Faith, Divine Favor, Bless, as well as some healing from Lay on Hands, Healing Word, Cure Wounds, along with your auras. This is actually going to be a build that's fairly useful to the rest of the party, as opposed to just building all the way into damage like we could have done if we went full-on monk. And yeah, that's the build. So thanks for tuning in, and again, a special shout out to Stef for the build recommendation. I hadn't seen Princess Mononoke before, and I gotta say, it is one of the best fantasy movies I have ever seen. If you haven't seen it yet, you're missing out. I highly recommend checking out that movie. Come back every Monday to see another original character build for Dungeons & Dragons 2024 5th edition. Next week, we're diving into the recent Unearthed Arcana and making an ice-themed Winterwalker Ranger. Thanks again for watching the video, and we'll see y'all next week.